Good morning, Courthouse Community United Methodist Church. This is the day the Lord has made. I feel like I need to introduce myself. After all, I've been gone since 1993, 20 years ago. Most of you have no idea who I am. I'm Bruce Tuttle, and I was the founding pastor of your wonderful church. Right now, you're engaged in preparing for your Every Member Commitment Sunday, and I think that's good. We've always been a church that preached tithing, and we always tried to be a church that was a double tither, especially to missions. From all I understand, you're continuing to do that. Now, I hear the argument all the time, "Oh, preacher, I'm up to here in my mortgage. How on earth can you expect me to give 10% of my income to the church?" Well, you know, if you give God 10%, God then has 90% of your income to work with you to be able to do that which you want to be engaged. So my encouragement would be, strive to tithe as you best can. So we talk a little bit about where we've come from in these 27 years since the church was first organized. You know, the first name of this church was Redeemer United Methodist Church. Very quickly, though, we realized that for many people, particularly those who didn't have a church background, the word Redeemer was a stumbling block. They didn't understand what that meant. And so we were bold to ask our district superintendent, could we change the name of the church? Doug Newman smiled and said, "Sure, go ahead." And so on a Sunday in early 1987, we were quite Baptist. We had a congregational vote, and the congregation voted. Now, about half the congregation was in favor of naming the church Courthouse United Methodist because you were located down in the Courthouse area of Virginia Beach. The other wanted it to be community because they saw themselves as a community of faith. Now, we realized that last name would never fly because there already was a Community United Methodist Church up in the Kempsville area, but we allowed the vote to be taken, and lo and behold, typical United Methodist, when the vote was taken, exactly 50% went for Courthouse, exactly 50% went for community. Our lay leader was a young fella out of Pennsylvania. He was in the Navy. I remember his name is Ken Hess, and Ken whispered over to me and he said, "Why don't we just put the two names together?" And out of that, Courthouse Community United Methodist Church was born. You've heard about how that first Sunday back in October of '86, we weren't quite sure who all would be coming, and so I had invited a 40-voice youth choir out of Foundry United Methodist Church to come and sing, to provide the music for that Sunday. Well, we were meeting down at North Landing Elementary School, and if you've ever driven by that school, it's got a tremendous parking lot, and nothing is more discouraging to guests coming to a new church than to see an empty parking lot. So we asked the director of that 40-voice youth choir if they would please allow all the kids and their parents to drive their own cars that Sunday to fill up the parking lot. And I remember looking out just before the service began. The parking lot was nicely filled. We met in that North Landing Elementary School for 3 years. And after about 2 years, we were negotiating to buy land where you're currently located, there on Princess Anne Road. And it was time to be able to have our groundbreaking service. Well, it was a beautiful day. Some of you will remember when we had chartered back in 1987, we had set up a gigantic circus tent. We had to rent an RV, a recreational vehicle from the Navy, of all places, in order to have a nursery for all the children that were there. But on that Sunday, Doug Newman, our district superintendent, officially organized Courthouse Community United Methodist. Steve Keskis and his family. Steve was the first adult to be baptized. His children were baptized as well. And since that day, you have been baptizing and welcoming members into the church. Well, when it was time for the groundbreaking service, there on that barren land, Don Lee had come and brought his tractor out and had bush hogged all of the weeds down, and we had official shovels for all of the dignitaries. They were getting ready to break ground, and as I remember it, Linda Smith, one of the members of the church, had her shovel, and as she looked down to the ground, staring up at her was a copperhead snake. Well, right next to her was Mr. Hoy from Hoy Construction that was going to be building the first phase. He simply took his shovel and whacked the head off of that copperhead, and we went ahead with that groundbreaking service. You have always been a people building on the stories of faith, moving ahead. And my encouragement now would be continue to look ahead and plan for what God has for you next. As you think about your commitment service, remember the scriptures coming out of Mark 10:27. With God, all things are possible. You are in our prayers. May the Lord be with you. Amen.